Hi, my name is Dan Funk. Today we're going to be talking about messages. I'm actually going to have a few videos about this because it's a fairly complicated topic. But in short, messages allow processes to communicate with each other. Two processes can be running side by side and sending each other messages, or a process can start another process through a message, or something outside of the system can make an API call in and pass in a payload, a JSON data structure that will fire a message that could potentially talk to another process that's running or start a whole new process up. All this is very straightforward, so let's just get started. You log in here as admin. You'll notice that we've purely blank slate, so I'm just going to add a process group to give us a place to work. Call this messages. And we're going to add two process models in here so that we can get them talking. We'll call one the chef. And we'll call the other the waiter. So the waiter is going to take an order, and the chef is going to get that order, prepare the meal, then tell the waiter, hey, it's ready, and off we go. So there'll be a conversation that goes back and forth between the two. And messages are all about conversations, as we'll see here in a minute. So let's go into this waiter process model and create a new BPMN file. And for conversations, for collaborations is what they're called, we're going to need to drag on this pool participant here. And we can give it a name. It's not necessary, but it can make it a little bit clearer what's going on. So here's our waiter. And normal start event. We're going to use a quick script task to set things up. So make this a script task. And what we're going to do is we're going to establish a little variable here called order. It's going to be important to us. And in that order is going to be a table number. Make it table number 42, like 42. And maybe we'll do some other stuff too. We can say like the drink for this order is Diet Coke, because who doesn't love Diet Coke? And the meal is lasagna. Sounds delicious. So we'll close that up. That's our setup. The waiter probably doesn't do it that way, of course. There would be a form, potentially, that they would fill out, much more complicated than what we just did. But the important part here is to get across the core concept of how you send and receive messages, not to build out the perfect waiter chef thing. Right. So the next thing is where it gets interesting. Here we're going to need to build like we're going to need to notify the chef about the order. And to do that, we're going to need to set up, we're going to make this a send task. So it's going to send a message. But you'll notice if we come over here to the messages for send task while it's selected, notice there's nothing here in this dropdown. That's because conversations kind of exist outside of a process. Right now we're going to have to define it. We'll actually have to step through this twice, but we'll define it out here at the top level, the collaboration level. And to do that, we need to set up a keys, properties, and messages. What seems complicated, but if you think about it the right way, it's going to make a lot of sense. So the correlation keys, that's the topic of the conversation that you were having. So the topic of this conversation that's going to be going on between the waiter and the chef is the order. And the thing that makes it unique, if there are a whole bunch of orders, if there's a whole bunch of conversations going on between a whole bunch of waiters and a whole bunch of chefs, you need some way to correlate the conversations. You need to make sure that the right chef is talking to the right waiter about the right table. So what we're going to come and do is create a correlation property on this order called table name. our table number. And the table number will tell it, we'll make sure that, like, even though there's like 50 of these conversations going on, 100 processes out there churning away, always the right, whenever this thing sends the message out, it always goes to the right thing. And then we're in a good place to make our messages. And we're gonna have two messages. There's gonna be the order taken message and the order ready message. The order's taken, it goes to the chef. When the chef is done and the order's ready, it goes back to the waiter. Now we're in a good position to come in here and assign this to the order is ready, or the order is taken. And we're gonna send that payload of that can include a lot of stuff. Let's see, what do we do in that setup here? We created this order with a table number, a drink, and a meal. So that's what we're gonna send to the chef. So over here, when we talk about the payload, we're just gonna put the order in there. So the order will, like, what'll pass across is not the word order. What'll pass across is just the stuff that's inside the order here. So a little dictionary that contains the table number, the drink, and the meal. So that's gonna be the body of this thing. So what we need to do is tell it, hey, the expression to execute against that body is table number. The thing that you want out of this dictionary that's going to be passed through is table number. So that's how we send the message. And when you send the message, you're going to have to, like, pause the process. It can't just continue to go on. So that's what this tool is for. These are events. This particular event is an intermediate message intermediate catch event, meaning that here it is in the middle of the process. We're just going to stop, and we're going to wait for a message to come back. And then you just need to tell it what message to wait for. So we can come in here and say, we're waiting on order ready. So this is the order was taken. Here we're waiting on the order ready. We're going to stick the response back in that order variable, and we're going to tell it that the correlation is still table number. So whatever JSON that comes back into this object, one of the JSON values has to be table number, and that is the correlation key, and that's what locks these two things together. And then we can just be done. So that's our full process there for waiter. So let's save that. Just call this waiter again. And let's go back out to messages. And look at chef. Now chef is going to start a little differently. We still need to put this thing inside of a collaboration. So this is the participant inside of a collaboration. So we've got our collaborations over here. We're going to have to reset up identical correlation keys, properties, and messages, which is a little bit of a pain. And we're hoping to, like, build into the Spiff arena the ability to see what the existing correlation keys and properties and messages are, so you don't have to rekey this a second time and get it exactly right. But all of this is still a work in progress. So correlation keys. We called this an order, right? And correlation properties. Correlation property is the table number. And there's two messages. There is the order taken and the order ready. So now our correlations between these two processes are identical. And from there, we just need to modify this guy so he is listening. So this is a message start event. And then we tell it what message we're looking for, that the order has been taken. We're going to stick this in a variable called, I don't know, we can call this my order. And order to cook. And the table number is still table number. We know it's just going to be a JSON structure, and one of the elements at the top level is table number, so all we need to do is type table number in the expression here. It'll extract it, and the two processes will lock together. From there, let's have it pause here, because I think it'll be useful to see what's going on, and just wait a bit. cook the meal. Is meal done? You know, and that'll be our manual process. And that's just going to pause it and get us to go and click a button. And then once that's ready, we can fire off another event. We can do a send event, a send task. Sorry, send task because we want it to execute right now. Meal's done. As soon as we click that button, we want it to send off a message. What message do we want to send off? That the order is ready. And what is our payload? Well, we can just pass back in exactly what we grabbed. So order to cook is what we're going to pass back in the payload. We could add some additional information to it if we wanted to, but for right now, we're just going to send it back. And the correlation key, as always, is table number, and table number is actually the name of the property on order to cook that we want to use to correlate. And then this process is done. So this really is send back to the waiter. So we can save this. Say this is the cook or the chef. I don't know. And there we are. So what happens when we execute this? Well, hopefully it works, because I don't like editing these videos. So we'll go into the waiter, and we'll click start. The process is kicked off. It is showing that it is waiting. If we look up here, we can see if like two processes are running. Hopefully they are. They are. There's the waiter who is waiting, and the chef who's saying that the user input is required. And if we go over to messages, we can see that like two messages are in the system, or actually, yeah, okay, there's three. The waiter did a send, and that correlates up here with the chef who did a receive on the order taken. So you can see these two things lined up and connected and fired. And now waiter is got an order ready that it's waiting to receive and hasn't completed yet. And you can click view here and see the contents of what was passed over. And here. So we'll step back out and see if this thing completes, right? So the thing to do is go into this chef process. Number 2, and it is waiting for us. You can see it's sitting here on is the meal done in the manual process. That's why it's in yellow. So that's the current one. So we can click the go action. Is the meal done? Yes, continue. And that drops us kind of back out to the front page because we're all done. Everything was completed and we don't need to look at anything anymore. But let's go ahead and like step over here to process instances. You'll see that there's two process instances. They are now fully complete. If we look at the waiter process, we should have done this earlier. It was waiting here to get the response back, but now it's received it and it's completed it and it's got all the information there that it needs. And yeah, that's it. That's how two processes can communicate and stay independent of all of the other processes that might be running out there. So thanks so much for listening, and hope to talk to you and see you again soon.